Exodus chapter 18, starting with verse 13. The next day, Moses sat as judge for the people, while the people stood around him from morning until evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone while all the people stand around you from morning until evening?" Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another. And I make known to them the statutes and instructions of God." Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What you are doing is not good. You will surely wear yourself out, both you and these people with you, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You should represent the people before God, and you should bring their cases before God. Teach them the statutes and instructions, and make known to them the way they are to go and the things they are to do. You should also look for able men among all the people, men who fear God, are trustworthy, and hate dishonest gain. Set such men over them as officers, over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Let them sit as judges for the people at all times. Let them bring every important case to you, but decide every minor case themselves, so it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all these people will be able to go to their home in peace." So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men from all Israel and appointed them as heads over the people, as officers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And they judged the people at all times. Hard cases they brought to Moses, but minor cases they decided themselves. We're going to go back to verse 18 as the main verse. You will surely wear yourself out, both you and these people with you, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. The title for today's scripture is, or for today's message is, Where Are the Effective Leaders? So for today, we're with Moses and Jethro. Now, hopefully some of you wonderful biblical scholars have done your research and you know at least a little something about Moses. If you know a little something, then you know that Moses has been through a lot. Moses has been with the Israelites for quite some time. In fact, Moses got in trouble and had to leave the Israelites, but we'll leave that part of the story out. He came back to the Israelites and has been with them for a little time. And Moses has already gone against Pharaoh and delivered the people out of slavery. He delivered the people from Egypt, and now they're in the wilderness. At this time, Moses sees a need. He sees a need and he decides to step in, as Moses has been doing, of the leader of the Israelites. And then we have Jethro. Now, some of you may not know Jethro. Jethro is Moses' father-in-law. Jethro is the father of Zipporah. And Zipporah has been away. Moses sent Zipporah away with his 2 sons, and Jethro has brought them back now, as Moses is a little more settled. And Moses now has a job to settle disputes, but Moses has a problem. All day long, Moses hears everybody's issue. From the sun rising to the sun setting, Moses is at work. And some of you know what it's like to work all day long. The sun comes up and you have already been up. The sun goes down and you're still up. And Moses is settling disputes all day long. But Jethro does something incredible. that we as mentors, as leaders, need to follow. Jethro came in, he saw a problem, and he could have done what a lot of us do. You doing too much. You working too hard. What's your problem? This is what you need to do. But instead, if you go back to the text, the first thing Jethro does is he asks a question. And how many times do we come in with a suspicious attitude, a stank attitude, loud and yelling, y'all doing wrong, fix that? How many times do we come in and we ready to solve a problem before we know what the problem is? We got all the solutions and we don't know the problems. But Jethro does something incredible. He stops, he assesses, and then he asks a question. And instead of saying, that's wrong, don't do all that, he takes the time to listen to the answer. Now, you know, some of y'all are professional arguers. But before somebody has finished their statement, you already coming up with a response. They get the first word out and you say, I already got that. I'm going to lock that in because I already know that's wrong. So let me prepare my response real quick, fast, and in a hurry. But instead, Jethro listens to everything that Moses says. That comes to tell us that a lot of us suck as listeners. A lot of us are terrible listeners. You know, it's like we sometimes have to tell the children. Now I work with a school, and so sometimes we have to tell them, you have how many ears? 2. You got how many mouths? 1. You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen twice as much as you speak. And we give that message to children, but maybe we as adults should be taking the message too. So we spend half the time coming to solutions for problems we don't have. But Jethro doesn't do that. As a leader and a mentor, he seeks to understand. He comes in, he sees something that might be a problem, and then he asks a question. That's the first thing he does. And then he cares enough to listen to the answer. He cares enough to wait and see what the full response is. Instead of coming in as a hothead and giving directions and making demands and have no requests, he sits and he listens to the full thing that Moses says. And he says, okay, I hear you. But what's also important is what Moses is doing. Because if Jethro would have came in yelling and screaming, he wouldn't have realized the good that Moses was doing in the first place. Moses was listening and settling disputes. He was playing the mediator. Too often we're trying to get involved in the mess, so we can't play the mediator. But Moses was trying to be fair and judicial, and he even said he gave judgments based on the statutes and laws of God. Now, that would have tripped some of us up ourselves. Because honestly, many of us don't study the statutes and laws of God. And I'm not talking about coming in Sunday morning. Welcome, it's good to see you all here. I'm talking about really spending time with the Bible. Now, I know it's a big book. I know it's long. It's got a lot of words, some of them longer than others. But really spending time to study and learn the law. How can you help anybody with a law you don't know? And we all too quick to give the law for the law we don't know. But Moses was spending the time to study, to know the law, so that when he gave the law, it was fair and it was right. Everybody in here has heard a scripture misquoted at least once. Now, you know, sometimes it's a slip of the tongue and that happens. Even I've done it. But sometimes it's because that book is looking a little dusty and a little rusty. But Moses spent the time to study the word, to know the scripture. If you really spend time reading the Old Testament, by the time you get to Jesus, you realize a lot of what Jesus is saying has already been said before. Because Jesus spent the time to know the word and to study the word. So first, we've got a great leader in Jethro who's listening who comes in and asks questions. And then, truthfully, we have a good leader in Moses who knows the laws and the statutes of God. But what Jethro does next is what's pretty great. Jethro says, you know, Moses, there's an easier way. I think you're doing this the hard way and you're going to burn out. Jethro speaks to Moses in love. See, this is where some of us get tripped up. We don't listen too well. We coming up with what we gonna say, and then when it's time to say what we gonna say, it's not in love. Nah, baby, that skirt too short. Now, you know that's not in love, even if it's true. We don't talk to each other with love and respect and with dignity. Instead, we spend half the time cutting each other down. And who wants to listen to somebody mean give advice? Who wants to listen to somebody with an attitude tell them anything? Even if it's right, the delivery is wrong, so it won't ever be received. Jethro is giving it in love and with respect and with care. He doesn't say you wrong and you've been wrong, don't stay wrong. He said, I think you're doing too much work, and there's an easier way to do this. Jethro tells it to him in love, with respect, and with care. As a mentor, everyone has had a mentor probably in life, even if it's your parents. Some of us have had good mentors, and some of us have had bad. Some of the lessons you learned was from watching somebody else do something you said, I'll never do that. And some of the lessons you learned was from somebody really talking to you, getting to know you, and meeting you where you are. You remember some bad advice. You remember a snippety comment. You remember somebody making you feel like trash. You know when you've had a bad person that was supposed to be a mentor. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody. That's all right. But when everybody thinks that you suck as a mentor, you may want to reevaluate. As leaders, it is our job to do things in love and with care and with respect. As a mentor, it is your role to do it in love. And so Jethro says, I think there's an easier way to do this. There's a way that's not stressing you out so much. There's a way you can spend more time with the children that you just got back. And you're going to burn out doing what you're doing. You are going to run out of steam and run out of room. And there are so many people burnt out. Here's the thing. He says you don't have to burn out. There's another way to do this. And we have all been guilty at some point of thinking we're Superman and we can do it all. You cannot do it all by yourself. Not only can you not do it all by yourself, he later on says your burnout is dragging everybody else down. You can't do it by yourself. Even Jesus had a team. And if Jesus had to get 12 guys, why do you think you can do it with one? Surely not. If Jesus had to trust other people in the ministry, why do you think you can minister by yourself? You giving a message that no one will receive because you look so tired and beat up giving it. Jethro said, not only are you burnt out, you burning out everybody around you. Your burnout burns out anybody nearby. You ever walk in and see somebody that looks so tired, you start to feel tired. It's like when somebody yawning, you start yawning. Somebody start wiping the sleep out their eyes, you got to wipe the sleep out of your eyes. And you don't even have any sleep in your eyes. Moses was so tired, he said everybody around you is tired. Everybody's gone to the DMV, and it's notorious for having a bad reputation because all the workers behind there look tired and sad to be there. So now you tired and sad to be there. When you're burnt out, everybody around you is burnt out. Doing everything yourself does not equal success. He says, this is not how you get there. This is not how you get where you need to go. Your burnout is burning everybody else to the ground. And Moses does something pretty great himself. Moses listens and implements the change. So first we see Jethro asking questions, listening to what is said. Then we see Moses doing what he's supposed to be doing, just maybe not in the best way. And now he gets the advice that Jethro gives him, and Moses goes with the plan. Now this is the thing too. Sometimes things are said to us in love, we just don't want to hear it because we just don't want to change. It is a fact that people don't like change. I don't care what any of y'all say. Most people don't like to move. Moving, it sucks. You got to pack all your stuff up and take it over there and then unpack all the stuff you packed up and find a new place for it. We don't want to change. We don't want to change at all. In fact, we don't want to change in our personal lives most of the time. It doesn't feel good to change jobs, doesn't feel good to change houses, doesn't feel good to change locations, doesn't feel good to change significant others. We just don't like change. But for some reason, it gets even worse when we get into church. We don't like when somebody park in our special spot. We don't like when somebody sit in our special pew. We don't like when somebody wants to help do our job because we only know the right way to do it. We don't like change. We don't like when somebody touched the furniture that Great Aunt Bessie gave 50 years ago. We don't want anything to change anywhere. But Moses was willing to change. Moses was willing to take the advice and see how it could work. See, we don't like to even try. I know everybody in here has heard somebody say something and folk go, that's dumb. That's not a good plan. We don't have time to do all that. That's just doing too much. Who wants to do all of that when we've been doing this for 35 years? Who got time to be coming up with new plans and new ideas and new shifts? All my folks around here, why we need new people? But Moses was willing to say, this is good counsel. Let me see what I can do. Let me see the changes I can make and the ways I can implement it. And Moses was open to that change because Jethro gave him that change in love. So not only is Moses now open, Moses is now willing to work. Moses is now willing to make the change. Moses tries to implement it. And Moses does something that, y'all, we don't do well. He gets with the change, and then he trains them. Now, we don't ever want to train. We said, I've been working for 20 years. If you can't figure it out in a day, that's unfortunate. I'm sitting down because I'm tired. Now, Moses was already tired. Now, Jethro didn't just say it. He looked half burnt out. But Moses, even in his exhaustion, said, why would I put somebody else here without training them? But even before he trains them, Jethro tells him, find somebody of good character. Find somebody of good character, good moral standards, somebody who's not a liar and not going to do whatever. And this is where we mess up too, because, we tired already, so we go get our friends. Y'all know, come on, best friend. Come on, do this thing right here. Help me out. But sometimes best friend is not the one to do. We don't always want to say it, but sometimes best friend is lazy. Sometimes best friend doesn't get along with other people very well. Sometimes best friend is not patient. Sometimes best friend is not considerate of others. Sometimes best friend love to complain. Just because you know them doesn't mean everybody else should too. We can't just keep putting our best friend in the position if they're not the one to do the job. We do it because it's convenient and easy for us. But see, now we being lazy, getting somebody else that's going to come in and be lazy. Don't just get somebody because you know them. And the thing is, you don't know people because you don't act like Jethro. You don't ask any questions, you make statements. You don't inquire, you make demands. But Jethro took the time to ask the questions, and Moses then said, let me pray. And let me look for the right person for this job. What qualities does this role require that I need to look for in somebody else? And let me not be lazy and get my bestie. Because Moses could have went and just got Aaron. If you know anything about Moses, you probably know at least a little something about Aaron. They spend half the time walking around together. And yet Moses doesn't go get Aaron, the best friend. Moses says, let me find the right person. The person of strong moral standing. And just because Moses didn't choose Aaron doesn't mean Aaron doesn't have good moral standing. It means Aaron doesn't have the standing for that job. Aaron doesn't have the qualities for that role. Aaron doesn't have the qualifications to do that piece. But we don't want to do the work. We don't want to search. We don't want to look. We don't want to shift anything that we're doing. We just want to get the easiest, most convenient person. We see somebody walking by and say, excuse me, come here. You want to do this over here? Sure, and we walk off. But Moses takes the time to train Aaron. Not to train Aaron, to train the other people coming up. He says if y'all are going to be fair, if you are going to be of good, strong conduct and listen to disputes, you got to get some training. And he takes the time to train them. See, sometimes we as people, we hear a complaint. Well, you know, they done been there too long. Maybe we need some new folks in there. Well, I just leave today and see how y'all do on your own. Instead of spending time to train the next person that can help do the load. Moses was burnt out, so everybody around him was going to get burnt out. So Moses took the time, he looked for good, strong people, good, strong moral standing, not liars, not gossipers, people who are going to do the work the best way they could. And then he didn't leave them and said, good luck on your own. God be with you. He trained them to the best of his ability. Because when you're burnt out, then you pick burnt out people. Then you walk off and leave that person to get twice as burnt out as you were when you started. But Moses said, let me do the work just another day to get them ready to do the work. So he did the work and he stopped trying to play hero. He stopped trying to do everything by himself. He stopped trying to fix it all. Even Jesus had to trust somebody with the ministry. Even Jesus had to trust that somebody else could do the ministry. And the thing that Jethro was pushing him to understand is it's not the what. The what is the same. What you're doing doesn't need to change. It's just how you're doing it. And as Christians, we got to understand when it comes to change, the message is the same. Jesus is Jesus, that was Jesus, that is Jesus, that will be Jesus. But the how has sometimes got to pivot. I assure you, we are not getting Christians the same way that Jesus was. I don't know if any of you have gone to the nearby lake and found some fishermen. But I didn't get any fishermen to come into church today. That doesn't mean that the word is different. That just means how we get them to the word has to pivot. And Moses understood that. Being fair and being judicial, that's just a quality. That doesn't have to change at all. Listening to disputes and sitting there and allowing people to share what's going on doesn't have to change at all. But how? That's what's got to shift. So Moses took the advice and then he made the shift. Now here's the thing about the people that Moses was working with. They were Israelites. And if you know anything about Israelites were notorious for complaining. They would complain when it was hot. They would complain when it was cold. They complained when they were slaves in Egypt, and they complained when they were free in the wilderness. They complained when they were hungry, and they complained that the manna wasn't enough. The Israelites were going to complain one way or the other. Whether you do right or you do wrong, somebody got a pitchfork. Somebody got a pitchfork. And that's all right. You can keep the pitchfork, but what matters is that you do the work. Now, if somebody complains, and they're going to complain either way, and you already tired, you're not going to receive that anyway. You can't be burnt out surrounded in a room full of complainers. Because now they burn out people too. Most of the time when people complain, they're complaining because they're burnt out or somebody next to them is. I'm tired of driving. What you're really saying is, I've been driving too much and I need to sit down. I'm tired of you wearing that shirt. What you're really saying is, you wish you had that shirt yourself, but you just don't know where they sell it. I'm tired of her thinking she coming in here with them heels like she doing something. What you're really saying is, you wish you had the money to buy the heels they're wearing anyway. They always got a stank attitude. What you're really saying is, maybe I should go to them in love and talk to them about how they're coming across to people, because maybe they don't know. Most of the time when we complain, it's because we're burnt out over something anyway. So now you imagine, the Israelites are burnt out. Moses is leading burnt out people. He burnt out. All God's children are burnt out. And Jethro is saying, now isn't this kind of crazy looking? All y'all walking around complaining. They complaining about that, and you trying your best not to complain, but you know you tired too. The only difference between Moses at that point and the Israelites was that at least the Israelites told how they felt. And Jethro said, we don't all have to be this way. We don't all have to be tired. We don't all have to be exhausted. We don't all have to drag ourselves in every day hoping it'll be better tomorrow. It can be better today. But you have got to be willing to get yourself out of the way, to change some things, and to train somebody else. And to train the right person, not just the most convenient person. You have to be willing to pick somebody that's not just your favorite person, because truthfully, it's not about you anyway. It's about how what you're doing is impacting everybody else around you. And right now, as the leader, you are impacting them for the worst. But you can impact them for the better. And Moses had been blind, because there were all these people around him that had all these gifts and all these abilities, but he didn't know because he hadn't asked them any questions. It was all these people around him that had all of these things they could have been doing and were even willing to do, but he didn't know because he never put it out there. There were all these people around him that could make things better, that could shift things and empower everyone else in the community, but he didn't know because he didn't realize he wasn't empowering anybody himself. You are not a good representative for anything that you're selling if you look tired selling it. If I sell you Jesus and I'm half asleep, that may not be a Jesus you want to try. If I sell you Jesus and I got a stank attitude, that may not be a Jesus you're willing to test out. If I try to come and I sell you Jesus and I say, but you look ugly anyway, who want to be with a Jesus that think they look that ugly? How you present it matters. And Jethro made it clear to Moses, you don't have to be tired. You don't have to be weary. You don't have to be sick of it anyway. You can get some help. But you have to open your eyes and see what's around you. You can't be so wrapped in yourself that you don't build relationships with other people. You don't have any idea what's right around the corner from you because you didn't ask. You don't have any idea what's standing right next to you because you don't know the potential. And because you don't know the potential, you have no idea that you're in a room full of people that could change things for the better. The biggest thing is that to be effective means that we have to train. If you want effective ministry, you got to have effective training. Now, we can't have train somebody walk off and complain they don't do the job well. So if you want effective ministry, you better be willing to be an effective trainer. And to be an effective trainer means you better have effective faith. Because truthfully, if Jethro had given Moses all that he gave him, all the advice, gave him an example of what being a good mentor looked like, and Moses didn't have faith that God was going to step in and provide, it would have failed anyway. The scripture tells us that faith without works is dead. But truly, leaders without faith are ineffective. If you don't believe that God will step in and support you, if you don't take the time to listen more than you talk, if you don't take the time to ask questions and figure out who's around you, if you don't take the time to be in communion instead of in disagreement with everybody that you see, if you don't take the time to really learn somebody so that when you give advice, it's not just advice for yourself, it's really advice for what they need and not what you want. If you don't take the time to be a true, effective mentor that is caring, that listens, that is concerned, then you are an ineffective leader. And we all know it's too many ineffective leaders running around. And who wants to be with another ineffective leader in the church? If you want the church to be effective, you've got to move. You've got to listen. You've got to be willing to change and pivot. And you've got to be willing to believe that God will step in as you train the next person. Where are the effective leaders? They're right here if you do the work.